He invited the captain to dinner so that they could begin the relationship on friendly terms, and he invited one of his close friends to come as well. As Ian Malforoche was a man of means in Scotland, the dinner table was spread with many fine dishes. Are you always able to feed yourselves with such choice food? Asked the captain. Ah, yes, of course, answered Ian Malforoche proudly. Well, you will not be able to have such luxury in America, said the captain, and I would strongly advise you to stay at home if this is the lifestyle that you expect for yourselves. Ian Malforoche was now very confused about what he should do. He wanted to emigrate in order to ensure that his family would be prosperous in the future, not to put them in greater hardship. But his friend spoke up. If you change your mind now, everyone will tell you that you're a coward and weak of heart after all you've said, all the songs you've composed, dispraising the landlords and how unhappy you are. If you back down now, they'll think that you're fickle and cowardly. Ian Malforoche knew that he was right, especially since it was the bards that magnified or destroyed people's reputations. One of the worst things that could happen to you in Gallic society was to have your reputation ruined, especially by a poet. So Ian Malforoche did get on the ship the next day, and he wrote a song about that as well. He and his family were not long in North Carolina when the rebellion in the colony broke out. Like many of his fellow Gaels, he had taken oaths to be loyal to the king, and remembered how badly they were punished for rebelling against the king in the last Jacobite rising. So he and many other Gaels fought as loyalists during the Revolution. He was eventually captured by the rebels and put in prison. Now, one of the only texts that we have that was composed in the Carolinas by a Highlander at this time was one composed by a mother as a lullaby to her daughter, her infant daughter. And this is my translation of a part of that song. The people I see here are not attractive, sorry folks, wearing hemp clothes and huge hats. Of course it's hot, right? They didn't wear that sort of thing in Scotland. Wearing open and unsashed khaki trousers, lacking kilt or hose. It is a pity. You are Indians, sure enough, out in the dark forests, without mirth or music. If they would only write down what is true as they ought to, the Gaels would never have to go chasing after them. Oh, how I am pained. I cannot even bring myself to make music. All alone in this place where my grief cannot be heard. Wolves and giant beasts howling in the land of rebels where we have forsaken King George. So in the song, it's a bit longer than this. This is an excerpt from it. There's a great sense of anxiety and unsettledness of the Gaels being caught in this situation between, understanding the reason why people were rebelling and sympathizing with them, but being forced to enforce the laws of the king and to act as his foot soldiers. So the song is extremely interesting from that point of view. Again, it's in the book that I edited. The Revolution divided the Highland settlements in the Carolinas and elsewhere in the colonies as people felt torn about the difficult decision that they had to make. Their loyalties were conflicted and they shifted with the outcome of battles and campaigns. But the result was that many Gaels who had initially settled in the Carolinas had to leave, and there were sometimes harsh feelings from those who had fought as rebels and stayed. Eventually, the bonds of kinship and a common Highland heritage made people want to reconcile themselves with their divided families. And there is a Gaelic story about that as well. There was a man named Duncan Ban, or Donogh Ban, who had an eldest son named Donald. Donald came of age and went to the lowlands to work. He soon decided to move on to America and eventually lost contact with his family. After Donald had left, Duncan had another son, poor woman, right? Who was called Little Donald. The middle sons were already doing the work at home, so Little Donald came of age and he told his family he was going south and then ended up going to America as well. Although Little Donald wasn't able to find his older brother, he thought more fondly of America since he believed his brother was here. He was only here a short time before the revolution broke out, and he found himself among the soldiers. He did occasionally meet a fellow Highlander, but he was never able to find out news about his brother, and he eventually forgot that he might even be alive and be here. Several regiments gathered one day, and the soldiers began to chat and to argue. little Donald had his share of the troublemaking, and he and another man went so far in their argument that they became enraged with one another. The only thing that would settle the matter was for them to fight it out. They agreed to meet the same time the next day, and then they parted. One man who was there said to his friend, "Did you see how similar they looked?" "Oh, yes, I did," said the man. "It was surprising, but who cares as long as we see a fight." The two men met the next day to make a space to wrestle, and they stripped the clothes off of them. The two men were waiting for a signal that they should start, but a fellow Highlander looked on, and he said, "Stop, stop, stop. Do not fight until you tell us what is your name and where you're from." "All right then," said one of them. "I am Donald, son of Duncan Ban, from the island of Haishkir." "And I am Donald, son of Duncan Ban, from Crochnan, said the other man. "Well, you're obviously brothers," said the third Highlander. "I have heard that Duncan Ban moved from Haishkir to Crochnan not long ago." The younger brother realized that he was face to face with a brother that he'd never met, and rather than exchanging fists, they embraced one another, picked up their clothes, and brought the third Highlander with them. That afternoon, they drank a toast to the old country. So the story is kind of a parable about how the various communities made up and reinforced their bonds of kinship afterwards. Despite the tolls taken on the Highland settlements of the Carolinas due to the Revolution, many Gaelic families remained, and a slow trickle of immigration continued into the early 1800s. Gaels in Scotland and Canada were curious about the fate of their kinsfolk, and from time to time, they would come to visit, or they'd write letters to one another to find out how they were getting on. Although not many sources survive from here, the Highland communities themselves in the Carolinas, we can complement those we have with stories and other texts recorded by visitors who came to check up on their relations. In the later part of the 1800s, a Gael from Nova Scotia, where I was just yesterday, came to visit the Cape Fear settlement. He came to a house on the side of the road, and he stopped and he asked the farmer, "Would you be willing to give a drink of water to a thirsty stranger?" The woman of the house was inside, and she arose to fetch the water that he had asked for. But there was an elderly woman inside the house, and she said to the woman, in Gaelic, ask him if he wants a drink of milk. When the Canadian Gael heard his mother tongue, his heart leapt with joy, and he immediately answered them in Gaelic, "Gavis, Mishagas, I guess time don't cheya hadiga go away." "Oh yes, I will, and thanks to the woman who had offered it to me." So he drank the milk, and he stayed with them, and they gave him room and board for the night, and all of the hospitality that they had to offer, because he was a Gael who understood and spoke their common native language. And that story was related to others in Canada for what it said about the cultural resilience of the Highland communities here in the Carolinas.